need support staff to clear the room. Stand up and walk. Now.
Hello and welcome to The Watch. My name is Chris Ryan. I am an editor at TheRinger.com, and joining me on the other line, as always, it's Andy Greenwald!
Hey!
Hi.
Hi, guy!
Hey, man.
It's like looking into a mirror today. I don't think this is going to be video, but Kaya called us out on our relatively similar wardrobes. We're just some guys in gray tees today.
Yeah, I really do feel like a college RA or something today. Like that's basically the look I'm going for. It's Thursday. Greenwald, what is up, man? It's so good to talk to you.
Chris, it's Top Chef Day. I mean, we're not even talking about it today, but I have to be honest with you.
The penultimate episode.
It's all I've been thinking about today. I am so hype.
We will definitely break down Top Chef on Monday after we come back from the weekend. Today, we have my interview in the second half of the show with Sam Boyd, who's the creator of HBO Max's Love Life, which is a show I really, really like quite a bit. And it was great to talk to Sam about a bunch of different stuff.
Did you see the news? Did you talk to him about the news?
Season 2? No, this was recorded earlier in the week, so we didn't know. I felt like there was like a implication that was going to happen, but no, we didn't talk about that. But we talked about a lot of other stuff, including Linsanity, which plays a role in Love Life, which I really enjoyed. But we are going to open up the show. I mean, first of all, Andy, any opening comments? I feel like I should always open the floor. Any running updates? Any Senor Fish updates?
Wow. You really blindsided me here. I mean, thanks for asking about the running. Right. I don't know if I've said this to you because I've tried to keep it pretty buttoned up, but I have learned that the only thing kind of weirder than telling someone about a dream you had is telling them about your running regimen, because it's not interesting.
Yeah.
At all to anyone, except the effect of that is I am so thirsty, both because I'm overheated because I'm running too much, but also I'm so thirsty to talk to someone about it, that if anyone just throws me a crumb, I will talk about it, which led me to the other week I was just busted at a socially distant hang. By the way, it's much easier to be busted in socially distanced hangs because you cannot just like Lyndon B. Johnson someone in the corner and just have a private conversation. You know what I mean? Like you kind of, it's all one conversation.
Yes.
And if you try a strategy of a diagonal crosstalk, you are done.
Yes.
But I was I saw an opening with an old friend and I was like, because she admitted that she used to run too. And my wife heard me say the words, "Oh, a banana and milk, that's so interesting." And I have not lived it down since. Because there's nothing interesting about that at all. But I was like, really before the run. So thank you for asking. And I've just bored and alienated everyone on this call as well.
No, listeners, I got to tell you, I've witnessed this firsthand. I'm on a couple of text threads with Andy, one of which is largely dedicated to Philadelphia rap appreciation and also just like childhood memories with our old buddy Matt. And in that thread, Andy mentioned listening to a mixtape that is on NTS Live by a DJ named Ted Draws that is like a Philadelphia rap compilation, which if people are interested, we could tweet out. But
I listen to it all the time.
And this has become Greenwald's running soundtrack, which he told our buddy. And I did not comment
you just it was like it's like you were on a Zen Buddhist retreat. You felt so silent for hours.
I was Don Draper at the end of Mad Men, and Andy, the guy, our buddy, was like, "Oh, what are you talking about? You run?" And then like I looked at my phone like an hour and a half later, and it was like 96 unread messages of Andy posting screenshots of running apps, but like also having an internal dialogue about which kind of running apps are invasive to his personal information. And like,
I didn't traffic in the running apps. That was recommended to me. What I did, which I will cop to, because I assumed I was already preparing my defense because I assumed this was where you were coming, was I assumed you, after a busy day at the office, you're managing a website, you're doing multiple podcasts, you're keeping abreast of the news, which is fast and furious and making people furious. You opened up your phone like, the bosom of old friends, my one respite in this uncertain time. And you saw a screenshot of my running sneakers.
Yeah.
I had helpfully provided. So
Just put the little moon icon on that thread.
So
Just
it's
a little-
going-
Yeah, do not disturb.
it's going great. But I did want to say I'm eager to listen to this interview you did with Sam Boyd, but I think that for people who haven't watched Love Life and are maybe on the fence about it, but are diehard fans of our podcast,
Yes.
they should know that Jamie from Devs has quite a comeback season.
Yes.
It is really a remarkable rebound and not one I saw coming.
No, I know. Jamie from Devs comes through. Scoot McNairy comes through. There's a cast of thousands. Anna Kendrick does a really good job on this show. So I was really excited to talk to Sam. But Andy, before we get to that'll come up in a little bit. I wanted to talk to you about a show that debuted on Sunday on HBO, regular HBO, not HBO Max. And that is I May Destroy You, which is the new show from Michaela Coel, who people might know from Chewing Gum, which was on a few years ago. And she's made some appearances in shows that we've talked about on and off here and there, like London Spy and Black Mirror and Black Earth Rising.
She was the star of Black Earth Rising, which was the follow-up to Honorable Woman that Hugo Flick did.
That's right. And so this is her new show. She's written and starred in, and it's a 12-episode, half-hour drama set in London and follows the life of this woman named Arabella, who Michaela Coel plays, who is essentially kind of a millennial literary star, is somebody who kind of has a growing following in the in literary circles based on some work she's done on Twitter and kind of a burgeoning literary career, and is on the precipice of, I guess, a kind of more of a mainstream level of success. She's about to turn in a draft for a book. She's got a boyfriend in Italy that she sees on and off. Although who knows if he's her boyfriend? I mean, that's basically the first scene of the show. And
by the way, I hope. Sorry to interrupt you because I'm very excited to talk about this show. But the one trend that I'm so worried is going to. There are many things, but I've obviously fallen victim to this terrible pandemic. But the growing trend of Italy is just a quick romantic vacation getaway on shows that are otherwise completely filmed in other places. A trend we saw in Normal People, a trend that is in this show, a trend that was in 000.
Lots of romance in 000.
That's how I choose to remember it. Anyway,
Stefano and his wife just kind of making their way through Italy.
I thought it was a love affair between the oversized pig and the bad acting members of the cartel who were fed to the pig, but yes. I digress.
I May Destroy You opens with a sojourn in Italy, but takes place mostly in London, and it is going to be, I think, essentially a show about Arabella piecing together what happens on a terrible night when she's about to turn in the draft for her book, and she goes out and she is sexually assaulted. The first episode ends with her kind of coming to an initial realization that is what has happened to her.
Because she has been drugged.
Right.
She's been drugged, and as she begins to realize has been assaulted and has to sort of piece together the events of this night.
Right. And this is drawn from Michaela Coel's life. A similar thing happened to her when she was working on a draft of a screenplay and of a script. And so the show comes Sunday, and obviously it's very heavy material. But I would say, just like my initial impressions of this first episode, and I was telling Kaya before we started, I've got screeners, but I really want to watch this one weekly with everybody else, because I feel like that's part of like the kind of way it should be interpreted or understood. I was blown away by the show, and I was blown away by it on a number of different levels. What were some of your initial thoughts?
I was too. This is. I'm trying to think. I mean, it's been a great year for TV. There've been a lot of shows that we've loved and have talked about. This may have been the most exciting debut that we've seen yet this year. It is absolutely exhilarating television. Michaela Coel, as you said, writes every episode, stars in it. She's a phenomenal performer. She's totally charismatic. You can't take your eyes off her. There is an energy to this show, to the performances, to the filmmaking, to London itself, to the way technology interacts with young people's lives, that feels like, and this is something that I think is a through line through the very best television shows when a new voice sort of announces itself. It feels like a window has been cracked open and you can peek your head out and there's an entirely different world there.
Yep.
And, as Chris said, it begins with the series kicks off with some very, very uncomfortable subject matter. So I'm not saying this is like a holiday to watch the show, but to be transported into Arabella's life and her friend group, and also, frankly for us, there's a generational tourism at play too. This show, I welcome our younger listeners to tell us that we're wrong about this, but it feels truthful to a lived experience that is extremely, extremely hard to do. Very easy to say you're going to do it, and extremely hard to do. And furthermore, I would say that the sexual assault that occurs in this episode, and in the spirit of the idea of trigger warnings and things, there's nothing on screen in this episode. I imagine that may change.
Yeah, it's a brief flash. Yeah,
to a memory.
Yeah,
that there's a reason why a lot of the coverage and gushingly positive reviews of the show have focused on that event, which obviously is the event that sets in motion whatever is to come over the next 11 episodes. But is it weird to say that it doesn't define this, at least through one episode, as a series? Because that is a huge part of it, but it is also just so completely and immediately alive in so many ways. It's very funny. It's very lived in. It's familiar. It's exciting. The music. As soon as I was done watching it, I texted Chris someone started to put together a Spotify playlist that goes from like Lil Wayne and Drake to Rosalia to Tierra Whack to British groups I've never heard of. There's like a great dance sequence set to what I immediately am sure is like some classic two-step hit from the turn of the millennium that I've never heard before, but everyone on the show seems to love, which is really cool. And it's just a vibrant, multiracial view of London that is really welcome, and I'm just thrilled by.
My favorite shows are ones that drop you in the middle of a world and let you keep up and let you pick up the pace. And that can be I May Destroy You, it could be Sports Night, it can be any number of things, but I love shows that are like, we now join this world already in progress. Not here is an outsider who's come into this new place and they're going to be the audience avatar. And step by step, someone will come up to this person and explain, well, that's Dr. House and this is how he gets things done on a day-to-day basis. It's not like that. It's like, I'm in this world immediately. I'm immersed in the sounds, the sights. And I love it's exceptional writing and directing because from the first interaction between Arabella and her, this Italian guy that she's seeing, to through the very last seconds of the show to her realization, and even like the she gives at the very last second of the first episode where she seems to be kind of coming to grips with what's going on. So much is in between the lines. So much gets left unsaid or just gestured at. There's a sort of B plot that is obviously going to get woven into the entire thing about another couple who are we're about to experiment with having a threesome. And they're the guy in the relationship is friends with Arabella, but that they were like sort of basically orchestrating a threesome over like an app, over a dating app. And so much of like what happens between those two people, and then as their group kind of expands throughout the episode, is like little stolen glances at one another, or someone looking at their phone at a moment where you're like, why is that person looking at their phone? And the way in which Coel like brings the use of technology and the use of phones and both the secrecy and the almost performative transparency that sometimes happens on phones and collides those things is mind-blowing. Like, I actually don't think I've ever seen a show that shows how people really use technology in this way.
I mean, also, there are just moments that are too real, like when she Googles how to write quickly.
Oh my God.
She has a deadline.
She has a deadline and she sets herself an hour-long timer. And all like the way that whole scene is shot with like her opening and closing her laptop and putting on different songs on like her Bluetooth speaker, getting high, not getting high, like just like the relationship to the creative process is incredible.
Yeah, and particularly, I mean, I was reading an interview with her that she did, and she talks about how you and I can both attest to this. One of the more challenging things to navigate as a writer, particularly if you're freelance or work or at least set your own schedule, is that because you could always be working, there is no delineation between on time and off time. And to see it through her eyes as someone who, is 10 years younger than us. And so just the constant barrage of information and temptation and distraction and procrastination, but also obligation. She has these overeager agents who are invading every corner of her life, including checking her Instagram to see if she's working or not.
Mhm.
It's just like a full crush humanity that is really something to see. And for as much as bleak as that sounds, that part of it, the thing that the show doesn't skimp on that I just loved is the warmth of friendships. It's so hard to do to make, this is a very banal comment, but like, it's really hard to make genuine emotion pop on the screen, especially in relatively small amount of real estate. We often talk about classic friendships or will they or won't they's or romances on shows, and we always point to the way the great shows, whether they are Friends or Mad Men, did it over dozens of episodes, right? In 30 minutes, actually, I was looking at the timer on the bottom of the HBO Go app, like in 12 minutes, we've seen Arabella interact with 8 different people, and you can gauge her intimacy with all of them. And there's such a warmth to her friends, who will obviously become bigger parts of the show as it goes forward to the series, that is really, you just immediately feel at ease. And then we should also just say, like, the talent pool she's drawing from. Like the dude who's in this episode extremely briefly, who plays one of her best friends, who visits her briefly in her sort of self-imposed writing exile, then goes off to hook up with someone on Grindr. All I had to do was Google this guy's name. I've never seen him on the screen before. And all of a sudden I'm watching him do Hamlet with Royal Shakespeare Company. I'm like, holy shit, is this guy the best actor of his generation?
Right.
Is this guy the best actor of his generation? Are they all on this show? It's exciting. It's just really exciting to discover something like this. And I just, I urge people who maybe had heard about the show or seen it come up on their apps or whatever, or maybe because this is a very busy and hectic time and just saw the headline. And the headline for a lot of pieces are about the trauma that is at the heart of the show, about sexual assault, about her own experiences, about working through things. If those things, and people have their own reasons for choosing to watch or not choosing to watch something, and far be it from me to tell anyone what to do with their time, but if that gave you pause, I encourage you to unpause and check it out.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we can just wrap it up there, and we can go into my interview with Sam. Is there anything else you want to talk about today?
I did want to say I have one other thing.
Yeah.
You did such a good segue, and I took a drink of my sparkling water, and I got one more burst in me.
No, it was only because you put such a nice punctuation at the end of that.
Let's keep going. It's our podcast.
Fucking, like, open it up. Yeah.
Just to say, we're talking about how like vibrant and like young in London the show feels like. And I was like, who is this young, brilliant collaborator that brought the visuals to her wonderful words and performance? And like Sam Miller, Google Sam Miller, 57-year-old dude that also did Luther and just it's like done episodic TV. And at first that gave me pause. And then it reminded me, and this is the first time we've made this comparison, and maybe it won't be the last. It reminded me of Fleabag, where Phoebe Waller-Bridge's words and performance and voice and singular vision is so strong. And then you remember that like Harry Bradbeer directed it. And he's also an older, male, white, British dude. And I'm very interested in these collaborations. Are these guys young at heart? Are they particularly open-minded and empathetic to working with collaborators? It's pretty interesting, because this feels generally TV directors, especially when they're working with Phoebe Waller-Bridge had done stuff, Michaela Coel has done stuff, but it's pretty remarkable that at least from this vantage point, they were able to service the vision of the creator so fully in such an exciting way.
Yeah, and I just think that they do such an incredible job of exploring like the different like physical spaces that the show occupies. You get such a sense of her apartment. You get such a sense of where her Italian boyfriend lives in Italy. You get such a sense of the WeWork that she seems to be kind of operating out of for the night that she's doing her deadline, and the different spots that they go to. And once she goes out and meets up with Simon and goes out for the rest of the night, where they go to this little bar that has, like where they're doing shots and dancing and stuff like that. Like they're so specific that they feel, and they feel so real. They only make the story that much more vibrant. So Yeah, just absolutely stunning stuff. I'm sure we'll talk about it a lot more over the course of the next couple of weeks.
We finished the conversation twice. Dare I open it up a third time? No, I'm done.
Dude, absolutely.
I just love podcasting.
There are no rules. I mean, like, I'm trying to think of, do you have anything else you wanted to hit today?
No, I've got nothing. It's, I'm just saving my reps for Top Chef tonight.
Okay. Yeah. Top Chef, we'll have a big episode on Monday about Top Chef, and hopefully we're going to have some pretty cool guests related to Top Chef coming soon. So we'll get into that. We'll take a quick break, and then we'll be back with my interview with Sam Boyd talking about his show, Love Life.
Have a great weekend. Stay safe, Berhanskis.
I'm joined by Sam Boyd, who is the creator of one of my favorite shows of the year, Love Life on HBO Max. Still seems strange to say HBO Max, but I'm getting used to it. Sam, what's going on, man? Thank you for joining me.
How's it going? Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm a huge fan of your guys as well.
Oh, thank you so much. I wanted to start with something very near and dear to my heart. Every show that I wind up liking a lot has like a moment where I'm kind of like, it has like a grab you by the lapel moment that sort of shakes you a little bit. And for me, Love Life, probably predictably, it was the Linsanity moment.
Right.
And so I wanted to ask, because it's such a great, for people who haven't seen, it's no spoiler to say that Linsanity plays a brief role in the opening episode. I know you wrote that episode, so do you have like a relationship to Linsanity? Because it's such a grounding experience for anyone who was in New York at that time.
Totally. Yeah, I think, a big part of the show from the beginning is the way that we jump through time from episode to episode. And when I was writing the pilot and focusing on 2012, and especially 2012 in New York, which is sort of the tail end of my college years there, a lot of it became about just trying to think back to what the kind of most evocative highlights of that time were, and what, in trying to kind of get as close to that feeling as possible, Linsanity emerged pretty quickly as just a very simple shortcut to kind of, 2012. And especially just, I remember being in bars in the East Village and the way that felt those few weeks, like the way the city kind of lit up, and being able to like weave that in as admittedly a fairly minor part of the episode, but definitely an important one. And I think important, especially in terms of how it orients us in kind of time and place, hopefully.
How much did you find yourself pulling little details like that from your life, from the lives of the people in the writer's room? Because I find that, this show it's relatively high concept in some ways, but there are these really fine point details that I think can only come from people's experiences, right?
Thank you. Yeah. I think it's funny, like sometimes I'm so obsessed with those details that I forget about the story, So that's how into it I am, where I'll be like, I'm trying to think, but there were just funny examples as we were writing where I would just get sort of unnecessarily obsessed with some small detail, whether it was a song or some kind of element of the pop cultural backdrop. So that stuff is the most fun for me, because in addition to writing it, I directed the pilot and I directed the finale, and for me, that just always is, those details are what makes it feel evocative and what makes it feel lived in to me. So, I think especially when you're telling what is ostensibly, as you pointed out, it's maybe a little high concept structurally, but, on the surface, it's just, it's a story about a person trying to find connections. And so any way that we could ratchet that up, we looked for. And I think for me, especially, with this and really with everything I've ever written, that those details are the most fun and I think some of the most telling aspects of it.
I guess this is kind of a what came first, the music or the lyrics question, but did you have an idea to tell a story of someone's young adult life through their romantic relationships and have each episode be sort of a discrete thing? Or did you have this idea about Darby and then the concept came afterwards? It
was definitely the concept first. And it was a situation where it even actually started as like an idea for a book of short stories or something. I think
it feels that way. It feels that way. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, the first germ of it was just that idea of, it would be cool. I think I love a lot of different kinds of movies and shows and stuff, but I've always been really inspired by the Before Sunrise movies and Boyhood and like the Francois Truffaut's movies about the character from 400 Blows, series that kind of follow a character over time. That's always been super interesting to me. And And so that was the first seed of it, was that would be cool to kind of do a character study, but really you're looking at these different capsules of their life and these different connections as parts of the whole, and how each of these smaller stories add up to this bigger story, make this person who they are. And so that was the idea at first for a while, and there were kind of different versions of it. And ultimately I became really interested in kind of tapping into my personal nostalgia for New York, and created this character who, unlike myself, is a young woman, and wanting to explore this character as a starting point, but also knowing that if we're lucky enough to do multiple seasons, that's really the potential of the show to me always, is its ability to reset. I think Darby's story in and of itself, I'm really proud of, but I'm excited and hopeful that we get the opportunity to have, each character that we follow from season to season be as different as possible, and to explore all of the kind of facets of being a person and trying to love somebody.
You were talking about this idea that you even considered making this into short stories.
Yeah.
And then that's something that's so personal, and you're going to have complete creative control over that. You're obviously going to be limited by the page, but in some ways that's all you. What happened to Darby and what happened to the story once it hits the writer's room, and once you start kind of bringing in these other creative voices? Because I've found that this is one of my favorite kinds of shows where each written episode, they have like their own signature to them, even though they feel part of a whole, but they feel different. Right. Like the Magnus episodes feel different. The flashback episode feels different. I was curious about what that was like.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I had written the pilot, to be honest, not ever expecting it to actually be a television show. So when we actually had a writer's room, and in working with my co-showrunner, who was Bridget Bedard, who worked on Rami and worked on Transparent in that same capacity, I always was looking forward to that opportunity to crack it open with other people. And it's the way I've always worked. It's the way that I made the one independent film that I directed before I made this show. I'm always sort of thirsting for collaboration. And to me, the way that I treat the script is, in this case, the pilot, I had written it and, was proud of it. And I always feel like I come to my collaborators and say, okay, I've done this work and I've figured a certain amount of things out, but now let's run with this together and let's get it on its feet in a real way. And so in working with Anna, who, also was an executive producer, and working with Bridget in the writer's room, the simplest way to say it is that it just got better. But really it got deeper and it got fuller. And I think a lot of it was me also knowing the limits of my experience as a young person and as a man, and wanting to bring other voices and experiences into the fold and have all of these people come together to make the show as good as it could be. So that was something I was excited for, and a huge part of it.
Tell me a little bit about working with Anna. Because I mean, I imagine that to take on a role like this, to play like this sort of huge swath of a character's life,
yeah,
that it's a different kind of commitment from her, and it's a different kind of creative partnership for her.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, getting to work with Anna was incredible. She's so good in the show, but she's such a smart person, and her instincts are so right on. And she just so totally, I think, got what we were trying to do, that I really did feel like she was a complete and total collaborator. And, really it was about building the character together, because I had this kind of starting point, as I said, in the pilot. But as I got to start working with her, and even before we were shooting, and figuring out what each episode was going to be, and figuring out where we were going to take this character, she was so instrumental in crafting that and developing it, and bringing anecdotes, and experiences of her own and stories she'd heard. And, I think the same way I worked with the writer's room, and really everyone, honestly, was to sort of just have everyone dig into their own pasts and memories and experiences and feelings as much as possible, so that we could really try to dig at the heart of that as best we could.
I imagine it's pretty hard. Like, I was thinking about this a lot in relationship to the Scoot McNairy focused episode in the second episode.
Yeah.
Which I thought, I'm a huge Scoot McNairy fan, and I thought Anna was incredible in that episode. And I was thinking about how hard it must be, because you're essentially, like, you're asking Anna, you're talking with the writer's room about, oh, we're going to bring in all these different anecdotes, all these different life experiences from all these different maybe points in time, and then we're going to try and distill those down into something that can only have happened to this person.
Right.
How hard is that? Like, because I was like, that's not like a wake that anyone else has been to. You know what I mean?
Right. No, that's a good question. I mean, I think what was awesome was to see that whether it's Darby or any other character we end up following, there are obviously superficial details about any person that you would think would preclude experiences like that. But then you just see how, obviously there are definitely things that would happen to one person and not to another, but there also is like a very universal undercurrent to all of it. And even if something like the wake doesn't necessarily come literally from someone's experience, those feelings do. And I think you pinpointing that example is great because it's one of my favorite sequences in the show. Bridget, my co-showrunner, wrote that episode and did such an amazing job. And what I love about that sequence is something that was exciting to me about the idea from the beginning, which is, normally with a show like this, which is sort of superficially about a young person in New York looking for love, which we've obviously seen before, and they have friends and whatever, you're usually with those characters in real time. And I love almost all the shows about those kinds of stories. But when you're in those stories with the characters in real time, you're having to live with whatever version of the character you're seeing for the whole season. And so basically if they're 24 in that season and as such an asshole, like you have to live with that for the whole season. And so it was really fun to go, okay, well, actually only in episode 2 is she going to be this age and make this mistake. And maybe it's not in conventional terms the most quote unquote likable thing for a main character to do. But if you treat them maybe more like a person that or like yourself, you'll see that it's the kind of mistake that most people make at that age. And so I think that sequence just does feel like the kind of the first microcosm of that within the show to me, where we're able to really see her fuck up and that it can hopefully remind us of ourselves instead of make us not like her.
I have a sort of bigger picture question. You have to bear with me because this is kind of like, so it involves multiple sourcing of so Andy and I just talked about this Maureen Ryan article that was in Vanity Fair that was kind of about the vanishing sense of attachment people have to shows, like whether it's like The Office or even something like House or whatever, where it's like you're essentially building up a relationship with Pam and Jim over the course of 50 episodes before they get together, or however long it was. And you guys are coming in and you're doing Love Life. It's essentially the first foray in original programming that Max is doing. And you're doing it in this fairly, I think only in the last year or two, really would, maybe like 3 or 4 years, would somebody have considered making a show like this?
Right.
Where you would go through the trouble of having a really cool character and getting Anna Kendrick to play her and creating this world with all these supporting characters that people are like, I want to see more of that person.
Totally.
And then you're like, there's a clock,
and then they're gone.
Yeah. And I was wondering whether or not if you had regrets, because obviously, you know, but whether or not you ever play the what if game with yourself about like, oh, if the show had been made in 2004, we would be hoping to get like our 4th or 5th season out of this.
Right. Yeah. It's funny because I think it's something I've considered a lot, but on the contrary, I feel like the way that we're doing it is, I think the best way to do it, because I think so many shows overstay their welcome with characters and drag things out. And it was even part of the original pitch for this show was this kind of this idea that I had that was like, oh, if every year we're watching some show we love over the course of 5 years, and in each season there are 2 or 3 episodes that we go, that fucking episode was unbelievable. So you think about the Patrick Wilson episode of Girls, or that's just one example that springs to mind, but so many great shows that have these kind of banner, episodes that everybody talks about. And, and then the episodes in between that are good, but they're normal episodes of a show. The idea was sort of, let's take one person's arc over the course of 5 seasons of a conventional show, strip out all the B and C stories and compress that into one season so that we're essentially just jamming that all in, making it kind of as dense as possible. and telling this complete story and then getting out before we're like, oh yeah, now she dates 10 more people. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I think, yeah, that was really like one of my favorite things about it from the beginning was being able to do that and being able to kind of play with the archetypes, play with the versions of this show that we've seen before and kind of hopefully deepen that or push past it, push past what people are expecting. And just, we also wanted to make a show that was character driven, but was never boring.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess that's a failsafe, right? Because it's like, otherwise one of the shows that I thought of when I was watching Love Life was Felicity,
Right.
and there was, aside from the fact that there was a huge amount of like, please watch Felicity, that was like a huge part of like saving Felicity and keeping it on. And how many seasons will this go? And there was always this, for some of my favorite shows I remember Friday Night Lights, it was just like,
totally,
this thing is not coming back. And people kind of look back on that like it's The Sopranos. I was like, that was on Hulu for a while or DirecTV. And then it was like, it would be on 9 months later, but some people had seen it. And we don't really do that as much anymore. I mean, there is a sort of, because of the platforms, it's like, here it is. Take it or take it or leave it.
Totally. Yeah. And I think when you're not beholden to like the traditional format of 22 episodes to air once a week for a year with sweeps and like whatever, when you can tell these more concise stories and you can trim out all the fat. And I think especially in this case where we were trying to do, again, like what some shows would try over the course of a series, but doing it in one season, or what a show would do over a season in one episode, it became really exciting to try to figure out new ways to do that and fresh ways to use the real estate of a season of television. And it was, pretty heavily inspired by, I think, a lot of the shows you guys talk about, which are these incredible sort of ambitious feats of half-hour storytelling that we've gotten in the last, 5 or 10 years, whether it's Girls or Atlanta or, any number of shows.
Yeah, Fleabag and High Fidelity. Yeah,
exactly. Fleabag and Transparent and, just so many shows where all of a sudden you have this sort of format and this vessel where you can tell smaller stories within it. I think that's what's really exciting to me too, because I also am, as kind of high concept as the overall structure of the show is, for me, that's just a way to be able to tell these smaller stories, and there are episodes where it's like, you can't make this couldn't be a movie. If I pitched someone a movie that was like, oh, this young girl starts dating her boss or any of these relationships, it wouldn't be enough. But when you're able to kind of make it this little short story, you can just dig so much deeper into these smaller things. And that really came from watching all those shows and going, oh, you can just have an episode that's just about a feeling or about one thing that happened to you or one idea, and that became really exciting.
That's really cool, man. Well, I love the show, and I think people are really digging it, obviously. Sam, thank you so much for joining me today. And obviously, Love Life's available on HBO Max for people to check out.